We have to start over.
So Mike,
How much did Mike of this?
we may want to start from the beginning for yours.
Okay.
Just to make sure we didn't lose anything. And I'm going to quickly, when I open it
And I
again.
won't pound this time.
And when I
break
press
anything.
start again, if you want to.
So I really
I
have
just want to quickly say what just happened for the record.
Or you want us to do it?
Go ahead.
There was a 8-minute pause on the CIC meeting, the server crashed and it was rebooted and now we're back up. I'm returning to the discussion about the grievance process.
And we will have Mike restart his.
The question that I wanted to ask was, the neighborhood associations are this feels really weird because you all just heard it already. The neighborhood associations are advisory and disseminate information up and down. And the CIC is advisory and disseminate information up and down. And what I have never heard an answer to is what can these two advisory groups do that would harm anyone? We advise, although I don't even remember the last time that we voted on any kind of land use issue anyway, but that is one of the things that, in the absence of a neighborhood association, we would. But still, it's an advisory, whether it's to the HRB or the Planning Commission or the City Commission. It's a purely advisory role, so I don't understand how this group or a neighborhood association could harm somebody, so why a grievance? The one thing that I did discover, and this is from the City of Portland, and the important sentence here is that in their grievance process, grievances are limited to procedural violations of a neighborhood association's bylaws that directly affect the outcome of a group's decision. Now, I could see that there could be a role in that. If an election is held and it wasn't done, if someone thought that it was not done according to the bylaws of the association and somebody's trying to hijack the leadership of a neighborhood association, then maybe it is logical for a grievance committee of this group to look at the bylaws of the neighborhood association, look at what happened, and try to resolve the situation. But outside of that, to me, these grievances, they real quickly get into legal questions about First Amendment rights, or they get into state statute of what is a conflict of interest, and they get into this interpersonal stuff that, to Vern's point, we're not lawyers, we're not trained for that kind of thing, and you're asking volunteers to try to weigh in on something that pretty darn quickly has a legal aspect to it that it just doesn't feel right to put people in that position or to get in a spot where they have to make that kind of decision. So to me, the only need for that grievance association would be just what they spelled out here in this Portland thing, and that is violations of bylaws of a neighborhood association.
Do you know if in Portland the advisory group or whatever that you can grieve to has authority over neighborhood associations? Or if it's like ours where the CIC doesn't actually have authority over a neighborhood?
I don't know.
Okay.
But from what I've read and heard, theirs is not entirely smooth. It's not like they have all the answers either. I think they have a lot of issues too.
Okay.
Portland is a little bit beneficial. They have the, what is it, ONI, Office of Neighborhood Involvement.
Yeah, they have paid staff just for
neighborhood associations, but that's certainly something that we could probably look into in terms of the structure, if that's something the CIC would like to follow up as we move through
And
this
Laura and I
discussion.
met with the city of Salem, and they have an actual neighborhood division with city staff, a department, and they had a similar, they have a commissioner assigned to every neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I think just from watching this watching this go through the process of reestablishing the neighborhood associations and then the citizen involvement committee, I think a lot of this originated out of trying to address some of the concerns in Kenema, trying to adopt the bylaws down there, and what do we do when there's this disagreement where we really want this neighborhood involvement from our neighborhood associations to happen. And I agree that it would be, I think, beneficial to this committee to identify parameters of what we grieve or what is reviewed. Because right now, you know, there isn't anything. It's very, very wide open, which I think has put us into a situation I'm not sure any of us envisioned when we thought about, okay, we'll just set up a grievance process. How hard could this be? And I think we've seen what happens, especially as you start to get tort claims or exactly questions of ethical violations. Those aren't citizen involvement committee questions. And so I think, you know, if that's something that this committee sees as a role that they should be involved in is, okay, we will interpret your adopted bylaws or whatever else comes out of discussion, or maybe it's not even that. But I think there has to be some sideboards identified and recommended for adoption.
And that leads us right to the third, we've kind of covered 1 and 2 together. The third question being, do you, and realize we're going to be creating a subcommittee to help fine tune, taking notes on all of our things that we've talked about, and we'll bring it back. But just, how do you feel? Do you still think the CIC should have a grievance process? Is that even with our goals that we have as a CIC, is that something that we still need? And has anything changed your opinion, or is there something, you know, what's your basis of why you feel that way?
Well, with my limited experience, I had noted that I think there should be the grievance process, but in my words, it should be set up so it's not allowing frivolous stuff through. So I think that's kind of what Mike was saying. My first thought is, I mean, we may not have, as neighborhood associations, have the ability to, or the power to actually influence anything, but we do have certain, from what I understand, certain responsibilities we have to perform, especially when it comes to land use. If a developer comes in and needs to do a meeting and we don't follow through with our part of it, it could hold up his project. I think that would be a definite grievance. So I just see reasons that we should have it, but it can't be just for, you know, somebody said something online and my feelings were hurt.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I have a thought. Well, as with Linda, in our experience of 3 years of going through something horrendous as a grievance thing, which went on to yet another evolution to another grievance, I find in that experience it would be, I look at it 2 ways. I think we are a body that can be sympathetic, and we should be listening to what is going on within the community and those neighborhoods. And when we have a chance to listen to it, we can support those causes. And if they're following suit and applying themselves in such a fashion to be a part of a body like we are, then we could sort of render some kind of like, confidence to that. When it gets out of that, when it gets into personal attacks, when it gets into like, rather difficulties within neighbors, maybe neighbor to neighbor, or maybe groups within a neighborhood, then I think we need to have a position where it's beyond our purview, and we should at that point have some kind of device, maybe in this fashioning of like a new structure, have a step at some point when it falls into some kind of criteria that it goes into mediation almost immediately. I mean, it almost would be like if after you've decided that like this is not resolvable in terms of like having a place to vent a personal kind of grudge, or we see it as a personal kind of grudge, we ought to just move it or suggest as a body that this should go on to, and there could be a list of people to suggest for them to go and have some kind of like consultation. And the idea is to bring us all back to the fold. The idea is not to like divide us up and to cause different neighborhoods within a neighborhood. The idea is to try and find a way to work together and bring a resolve to the miscommunication or the personalities within that body. And so I think strong with Vern is like mediation. I think it's got to be one or the second step within the course of action that we should put into this new structure.
Okay. Thoughts, Karen?
I like Portland's sideboards. And I don't think, I mean, that's not something that would require mediation, because I think it's helpful to other neighborhoods. If, you know, if there truly is a feeling that a bylaw was violated, that could then be brought to the CIC to review. Sometimes that's helpful to the other neighborhood associations, that maybe there's a flaw in their bylaws or something that needs to be looked at. But I think that's it. That should be the only way to come to the CIC to resolve things. And unfortunately, I'm actually a trained mediator. Mediation requires that all parties are willing to reach a compromise. And none of the issues that have come before this group, I think, have that intent or that possible outcome. But, you know, a bylaws violation, you don't need mediation. You just need to review the bylaw, review the minutes, and decide that, yeah, hey, you know, back to square one, you didn't follow your bylaws. Or is there something we need to look at in the bylaws that needs to be revised so that this doesn't occur again? And that would be easy for all of us to do.
Okay, taking that to the next step. So there's two parts to the grievances. There's grievances against neighborhoods or from neighborhoods, and then there's grievances in regards to the CIC. So do you feel that, again, is there a need to have, is it beneficial to have that, if someone has a grievance with the CIC, they bring it to the CIC?
But again, I think a grievance against the CIC would have to be a grievance to what is set out in the charter now. So there'd have to be a specific element where we're not following what it says we're supposed to do.
Which would look like?
Well, I guess I go back to what Mr. Mitchell was saying in terms of, I'm making something up right now. Because it's hard to come up with a scenario, right, where the CIC bylaws or code says you have to do A, and you guys decide to do B, right? So you should have made a recommendation to approve to the city commission or the planning commission or historical review board, and you guys decided to make a recommendation of disapprove. It's not binding. It's a recommendation. The person who's aggrieved can come in during public comment and raise that concern. So I guess it would be interesting to walk through what we think should be grievable decisions or actions.
Right, I can see on the neighborhood what's being said here, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, at the CIC, you know, okay, we're gonna recommend that the city commission consider reviewing the grievance process. Now, if someone doesn't like that, is that grievable? Or should they just participate in the process to go through that? Right, I think that's where, I mean, we can't solve every issue of someone who feels like a majority of people voted and they didn't like the vote.
Well, and then that lens too, the CIC is actually, now that it's codified, see, we put the grievance procedure for CIC when we had our own bylaws. Now that it's codified, is it beneficial for for someone to come here, or is it better to go to the city commission who oversees the CIC to say, hey, they recommended this and this? I'm just throwing
right,
it
and
out there.
I think maybe part of this process is looking at what are the roles and responsibility as codified in the code, and you know, honestly, is that something that should be appealable to the city commission, or if you're really that aggrieved, you sue, right? I mean
well, like,
some of these are pretty clear.
Look like?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, other than the public, other than planning commission and HRB, you say that someone is grieved by the TAC or the transportation or Parks and Rec. Do they have grievance?
No.
No, I don't think they do, because it's not, they're making recommendations, right? The process doesn't necessarily end there. So I think I once again just go back to, I think we just need to look at what are truly grievable issues. What do we want to be dealing with at the CIC? You don't have to address every concern because there are other avenues. And I hate to say that, whether that be the city commission or the circuit court, but that's the way the system's set up, right? This shouldn't be the court for every perceived slight.
Right.
Amy, can I? say
Yeah, go
something?
ahead.
I think on my end as staff, I want to make sure that whatever sideboards are created are pretty clear and objective for me. So I never want to be put in a place to say that grievance doesn't meet the criteria, therefore we're not moving it forward, unless it's really clear. Or if it's a gray area, does it go back what Dennis was saying, which the CIC can kind of do the initial, not even before a grievance committee is created, like, yes, we agree that this is a grievance, go get mediation. I mean, like, I don't want to be placed in an uncomfortable role of staff. So either it's obvious that it's not rejected, but even though I still I can see scenarios where I will want to forward it to the CIC because it's gray. And, we need to make sure we can account for that.
But if we come down to, because part of the reason we were given for not having bylaws and being put in the code was to align us with other city committees. So other city committees do not have a process to grieve them, ergo CIC should not have a process to grieve CIC. And if we clearly state that the CIC will review complaints of violations of neighborhood association bylaws, that's black and white, that there's no call there. They're going to have to cite a bylaw, what the violation was and when it occurred. And then, and I'm not wouldn't even call it a grievance anymore.
Well, it's interesting. You think about the Transportation Advisory Committee, right? Someone would come in and say, I have a concern on Leland Road at so-and-so intersection. And, either the Transportation Advisory Committee is going to look at it or we'll get some information on it, right? So it is, yeah, it's interesting how we've set this up in terms of trying to be the mediator of all disputes, right? And I think once again, if we can define what it is we think we're going to address. And I understand Christina's concern of the gray area because it's hard, but if we can be as specific as we can as to what we think the CIC role should be in assisting neighborhoods to effectively provide public communication, I think it would be a benefit to everyone involved.
So at this point, are we ready to recommend going to a subcommittee? Are you comfortable with having a subcommittee, or maybe it's just the executive committee look at it, come up with some kind of writing up what we think and then bringing it back, like with the suggestion of this is where we think we heard, looking at everybody's comments, and what do you think?
Probably not to cut anybody out of the decision, but probably I would suggest that you do an executive committee that has the outreach to Tony, Christina, and not solve the problems at that level, but identify some of the barriers and some of the, issues, and bring those problems and issues back to the bigger committee within the CIC to start spending more time on it. If you start with the bigger committee and we each throw our own personal objections or biases into the equation, we spend a lot of time that may not even get off the runway if you did the executive committee to some core people within the city to say, yeah, I'll go along with that, or or I'm going to veto, don't even look that direction, just to get us, it's a slight pause, but get us headed in the right direction, on the right course a little quicker.
So when we come up, and I'm comfortable with the executive committee doing it, I think that's easier. and I'm not sure how many volunteers you'd have. Oh, but when we come up with the sideboards, is that going to require a recommendation to the commission to amend the code?
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
comes out of this, we then have to send to, this is our recommendation, what do you think? And then they'll do their thing, and then it goes through the whole involvement process of,
Yeah, and your work plan, we kind of have it laid out a little bit. And I actually provided a updated version because just to make sure that we are being prudent in our legalness, we are making, if there's a motion tonight to put a stay on future grievances while this happens, we're gonna have the city commission adopt a resolution in the April 18th meeting. So tonight, the motion will be to recommend the suspension of the grievance process while this work plan item is being done. But on your work plan item, we have a city commission work session once there's kind of an idea of what the code amendments may be. And then based on input of that, then kind of come back to the CIC, kind of adopt any revisions and then send it back to the city commission. This is not a land use part of the code, so it will be adopted by ordinance, but it'll be through a notice public meeting.
okay.
Sounds good to me.
Thoughts, anyone else? Are you comfortable with that? Looks like it, okay.
Go forth and be brilliant.
Go forth and be brilliant.
Looks like you're about to say something.
Who, me?
Yeah, you're leaning into your mic.
Yeah.
Mike?
That's my tell, right? I
Mike.
wouldn't be a good poker player. I've got a suggestion. That first we find out if anybody other than the executive committee would like to be on the subcommittee. So we get volunteers. And if we don't have volunteers, then I'll make a motion.
Okay. Does anyone want to volunteer to be on a subcommittee for sorry.
Can I ask
Looking
a
at the
question
grievance,
first?
yeah.
What consists of an executive committee?
The three of us,
Oh, okay.
the officers. Any volunteers?
I'll join if you want.
Okay. Okay, anyone else want to join? That's pretty,
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion.
would you?
I move, and it's two parts. Part number one, the CIC recommends to the city commission that the grievance process be, what's the right word to use?
Hold on.
Suspended, put on hold,
Stay.
as soon as possible.
Suspend the grievance process set forth.
Okay, suspend the grievance process as soon as possible, pending, part two, the subcommittee of the CIC making and presenting to the city commission a recommendation on the grievance process going forward.
Okay, second? someone?
Motion.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right.
Any discussion?
Hold on a second. McLaughlin?
So this is
Oh,
for,
so this is the,
these are, we're actually voting, so the primary, if it's here, we do the vote, if not, then the secondary. So we just go by neighborhood
yeah,
association.
McLaughlin,
So yay or nay?
Tower Vista,
Yes.
Kenema,
Yes.
Gaffney Lane,
Yes.
Caulfield,
Aye.
Rivercrest,
Abstain.
Hillendale,
Yes.
Berkeley Hills,
Yes.
South End. It's not here. Okay, motion
Okay.
carries.
Great. So I will send a memorandum to, who am I sending this to?
City Commission.
The city commission, recommending that, or saying that we voted to ask them to suspend the grievance process. On that note, we did receive another grievance today. So at our May meeting, we will need to look at what needs to be done for that grievance. So Christina will give us more information on that. Did we hear anything on the other, the ones that we,
I have not
Have on
heard
hold.
anything on the ones that are on hold yet.
okay. Okay, anything else that I didn't cover in regards to grievances or our work plan?
One quick question. On hold, does that mean it's stopped dead in its tracks or it's
We were waiting
temporarily
for them
inactive?
to come back. It means we sent them and said, we will not do anything until you tell us to move forward
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Matheson recommended that the grievance not be heard, and so the letter back to him was saying that this will be put on hold until the CIC hears. And for Ms. Miller, she requested the whole CIC be recused from the grievance committee.
Yep.
And so the CIC at that meeting made a finding that they would not move forward with the grievance until they heard from Ms. Miller that she no longer is requesting full recusal.
Thank you.
And that's on the chart, if you have questions about that. Okay, looks like that is the end of our general business. And we'll move to roundtable. We won't make James go first, so we'll start down here with Janice. Did I start with you last time?
Yes.
Oh, then you're a pro.
Yeah. Well, we had a wonderful last meeting.
Is your mic on? I need to
Yes.
Make sure you're really up into it. There we go. Yep.
We had a wonderful last meeting. We've got many concerns from people about the Roosevelt House. And it has split our community association completely apart, and we need help. Other than that, it was a pretty good meeting.
Okay. So you put out that you need help. What does that look like? What are you thinking? What do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. We've lost our secretary. We lost our vice chair. They both resigned because of this. We need help. I don't know.
We have a neat, really nice neighborhood nearby you called Kanema, who's been through this. Maybe talking to them could help give you some ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Roy?
Okay, our next general meeting conveniently is tomorrow night, so. And you don't have to remember it for very long. We've got on the agenda, Commissioner Shaw, I believe, is lined up, or one of the commissioners, if he can't make it. Master Gardener, Jim Cronenberg, I believe is from the people that go to the Saturday market all the time and tell you how not to kill your plants like I do. And also Vector Control is on the thing to tell us about skeeters, I guess. So it's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at our normal spot, Living Hope Church on Myers Road. And everybody's welcome. Other than that, not much going on in our neighborhood.
All right, Linda?
Saturday, we're having the Adopt the Street in Kenema. It's going to be at 1 o'clock, weather permitting. And our local brew pub, Feckin, is offering discount drinks and food for those who help, or just anyone afterwards, just kind of a neighborhood party, so around 3 o'clock. If you want to stop in, don't drop anything on the street though, but
Trash.
All right, Karen?
We had a very interesting meeting. Rivercrest has had some well-attended meetings before. This is the first time we've turned 65 people out for a neighborhood association meeting. Huge thanks to John Lewis, Phil Lewis, Jim Band. Boy, did we hear. I also need to thank Clackamas County for training me on running meetings. I picked a few people to summarize the problems with the overlook, and then kind of asked everybody if their concern had been voiced, so that we didn't have an evening of 15 people sharing the same thing. By the time the meeting was over, everyone in the room said that they felt that they'd been heard. And I think having the department heads there, hearing directly from the people, made a huge difference. They are meeting together on ways that things can be done, because part of it's park, part of it's street, part of it's law enforcement. Jim's already made some changes that are helping, and I will be meeting with our secretary and 2 couples from the neighborhood that have volunteered to follow up on this. We'll have a follow-up meeting with those department heads sometime later this month and hope that we'll get some more changes made.
I have to say, I went to that. Karen did a great job. And
Just
it
the
was
training.
wonderful to hear. I mean, when all these complaints and they said, well, what's going to happen next? And to hear Chief Band say, well, no, that's too far out. We need to give you answers quicker. And let's not leave this open-ended. Let's set some dates and time. I mean, I think that really helped.
Yes, I do too.
Calm. And yeah, it was really not what I'm used to with that big of a crowd.
You might want to send that team over to Rome.
So nobody heading up to the cross after this meeting, right?
Yeah. No, our kids are going to go.
That's it.
Caulfield had our neighborhood meeting last week. We had a presentation from Chris Wadsworth on the Neighborhood Watch program and how to get that started. We have some neighbors who are interested in doing that. Great presentation from John Lewis about all of the projects that are happening in the city. Some discussion over, on the Beaver Creek Road sewer project and how smoothly it had gone with the work overnight, except for the woman that lives right next to the work overnight and can't sleep because of the work. But she did agree that it, in the big, the global it made a lot more sense to do the work at night than anyway. But he had a great presentation, talked about the Myers Road extension and so forth. And then we had a presentation on the timing for the park property on Glen Oak Road and how that's going to get developed. And got a volunteer for a naming committee because it's been commonly referred to as Glen Oak Park, but that's not necessarily the name. So there will be a process, and we'll be going out in the trail news and on the city website looking for suggestions. And along with the suggestion, we want a little short statement on why it should be the name of the park. And then by the end of this year, have a name for the park, and by the end of next summer into early fall, we'll have a completed Phase 1 park. So
Great.
That's it.
All right, Gaffney Lane met March 8th. We had a great meeting we had the fire department come and explain what's going on building the fire department that they're rebuilding in our neighborhood and talking about some of the things they found as they were digging up, like rocks the size of cars. And I said, oh, that sounds like the Lynn Avenue project all over again, doesn't it? And they found like an oil tank they weren't expecting and some of the things. And we're starting a new thing where we invite a business to come and talk to us. March was Fred Meyer, and the store manager or director, Danny, came. It was fascinating. He talked about all of the ways that Fred Meyer actually gives to the community. I had no idea. You can take their little surveys and it asks you if you think they give to the community, and I usually said no because I didn't know. So that was really neat. And we saw some direct, immediate changes from feedback that people had and questions that were asked. And so you want something done, he reads individually every survey that comes through for that store. So, and they have, I think he said 13 floors of people, I can't remember what state he said, of the people that sit and crunch the numbers when you shop there to know that, oh, we want wider aisles or this or that or that. So it was really good to have them there. And then we had, we heard about the repertory theater at the college and what's coming in there. Our next meeting will be in May, and we'll have the presentation by John Lewis, and then Commissioner Shaw's coming. And then our business that we're highlighting is the Khalifa, which is the marijuana dispensary that's in our neighborhood. And I attended the Chief's Advisory meeting. If someone from your neighborhood didn't go, you might get the minutes for that. It was really good. They had a gal there from the OLCC, and she talked about, marijuana and the whole process. And I thought it was a really good meeting. One thing that came up from that meeting was question on, we have transportation questions all the time, and so we thought we were going in one direction to request some things from John Lewis, but when I just sidebarred him a little bit, he said that's probably not the way to go. But I wanted to kudos to him. We had lots of complaints on that Beaver Creek thing that all the signs said 8 o'clock, but starting about at 7:30, the lanes were shut down, and so I shot off an email, and with that day it was fixed, that they had given the construction company permission to start earlier, but they forgot to change the signs. And that's all, people were just like, we don't care if they start early, we just need to know, we're planning our trips. And so kudos to them for responding very quickly. And I think, we have, if anyone's interested, this is a side note, the Beaver Creek Lions has their annual auction and benefit. I have some little handouts here. They asked if I would just say it's on Saturday, April 14th. This year will be held at the 10 o'clock church. They used to hold it at Ogden, but the requirements have changed as far as liabilities. And so it's at a different place, but they do a lot of good benefits for vision and helping kids with seeing and glasses.
Adding to Linda, our next meeting is the 19th of April. And I think one of our guests will be a representative from Metro, and the neighborhood's quite interested in talking and listening to what their plans are. Here, take that. And that's it.
And I'm from Tower Vista, and we hold joint meetings with Hillendale. And since Roy is far more organized than I am on that, you already have the whole picture for tomorrow night's meeting.
All right.
All right, James King with McLaughlin Neighborhood. I actually missed March's meeting. Apologize. This isn't the only meetings I've been missing. Our next meeting is a steering committee this Thursday, and on Saturday, we are doing the cleanup on 7th. If you guys want to come, meeting at 8:50 at the fire station, right there on 7th to clean 7th Street on the 7th.
How far up do you know what the limit is?
Yes, last time we started like at the 7-Eleven, went all the way up to where the Dutch Brothers is last
wow.
year. We did the whole thing. There was not a lot of us. There was 4 adults, 5 adults and 3 kids last year.
That's quite a stretch.
Especially when you pull those metal grates.
Wow. Good job.
Thank you.
Christine? Oh, is that all, James? Sorry.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, just to reiterate, we had another CIC grievance submitted today, so that will be processed. It was turned in before the work plan was adopted and before the City Commission approves that suspension. So you'll be seeing that at the May meeting. That is a grievance from Mike Miller to the whole CIC. Secondly, I realized I have some incorrect dates on this matrix, so I will revise that and get that emailed out to you. And in regards to the park naming / renaming of the Glen Oak Park process, as a CIC rep, I'm on that committee, and I sent an email out. And Mike Mitchell is also on that committee, and the kind of motion was to move forward on this public process to help with, some type of actual committee that's created to approve the name. So I'm really excited.
It's not going to be CIC Park?
No, it's not going to be.
Hopefully it won't be as controversial as Library Park.
So I think this, it's a new park. It's, it's in an area that's not had a park before. It's exciting. I think this is a really great community outreach opportunity.
But I did submit a name.
And we know Karen did submit a name already. So if there are any new updates, either Mike or myself will provide the group an update email. And that's all I have.
Okay. Just quickly, the things that I had for you, that emailing Pete's presentation, Hazel Grove Wrestling Farms, double check on their meetings, and then you just, like you said, the new grievance. Okay. Tony?
I'll let Commissioner Shaw go.
Oh.
Okay. Well,
Commissioner Shaw?
this is, we have loyalty in our midst right now with the Citizen of the Year, Ms. Moore.
Right.
I was going to say that. I forgot. Thank you.
And then,
Forget.
not to be outdone, but right
Yes,
here,
yes.
Main Street, best in the U.S., right there. And then over here, developer signs Riverwalk permitting. Some good things happening there. And let's see, we did win our case for the upper yard for it not being a park, so Public Works can continue to move forward to a little bit more, so. And also I sit on a, what's it?
McLaughlin,
I
they
forgot to
lost.
say we lost.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Won, and I forgot to say we lost.
Nicer to say this.
We can go back this way, James.
Okay, it's your turn again. Pass.
So, I do sit on this group called Oregon City Together, which is a group of folks that is trying to curtail the use of marijuana and alcohol at the high school and middle schools. And they sent out a marijuana purchasing decoy to the dispensaries here in Oregon City and got 100% compliance. They did not sell to any minors, so it's pretty cool. So, and I think that's kind of all I got.
Okay. Just real quick, this Saturday from 9 to 12, McLaughlin Promenade cleanup, so you can register at the VFW. It's at 104 South Tumwater Drive. About 8:30, you can start registering there, and will help us do the cleanup on this Saturday. And then after you do the cleanup, the Downtown Oregon City Open House is from 12 to 5 o'clock. Have an open house type of atmosphere downtown, just kind of celebrating our businesses. From the end of the Oregon Trail south to 5th and Main, we'll have shuttles provided in coordination with the Downtown Oregon City Association. So hopefully you can come on out for one or both of those events this Saturday. That's all I have.
Okay, any other comments? All right, with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.